Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Principalities and Powers, where we talk about Hermann Oberth, another godfather of modern rocketry who is oddly very occultic. Skylar and I discuss his sort of biography and very strange beliefs in this one. And yeah, it should be a fun one. But before you get into this, please consider going and rating and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, you can follow us on YouTube. And we have all the social media accounts as well. You can follow us. The links will be in the description of this episode. If you want to support the show monetarily at all, go ahead and you can find the links as well in the description. All right, let's not wait too long. Let's jump into it. Thanks again.
Oh, you think darkness is your ally? You merely adopted the dark. I was born in it, molded by it.
For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, against flesh and blood, against flesh.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
But against principalities, against powers, against powers, against powers.
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality.
And against the rulers of the darkness of this age, the darkness of this age, the darkness of this age.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
In the strange twilight of the mid-1950s, an era when the space race and science fiction novels had captured humanity's imagination, and the boundaries between fantasy and reality seemed increasingly porous, a psychic named Barbara Troll claimed to be receiving transmissions from beyond our world. During her sessions, she would slip into a trance-like state, her consciousness seemingly vacating her body to make room for something else, something otherworldly. In this altered state, her hand would move across the page with urgent precision, transcribing messages from entities who identified themselves as the Uranids, beings from somewhere beyond Earth's atmosphere. The communications accumulated over months, filling notebooks with cryptic instructions and cosmic pronouncements. Then, during one particularly vivid session, the Uranids delivered a startling command. She was to gather all of her writings and deliver them to a specific individual, a man named Hermann Oberth. But this was no ordinary recipient. Oberth was one of the founding fathers of rocketry itself, a legend who had helped birth the very technology that would carry humanity to the moon. Why would entities from the cosmos choose to route their messages through a medium to one of Earth's premier rocket scientists? The oddity of this connection alone demands closer examination. Oberth himself, however, was no stranger to the strange. He had already dabbled in the occult for years, even meeting with mediums prior to Troll, who he alleged gave him very accurate information. He would engage in séances and all manner of magical rites, and despite being a top-tier scientist in his own right, he had long rejected scientific materialism, much to his peers' chagrin. In many ways, he was very much ready to receive the message the psychic was delivering to him. It wasn't unexpected or taboo to him in the slightest. As it turns out, these entities, these so-called Uranids, were already a fact that he had long accepted. A term that was coined in a science fiction novel by a German author named Hans Dominique, and it seemed Oberth adopted it as a catch-all phrase for extraterrestrials, beings he already believed had been in contact with Earth and were observing it from afar. What precisely was the message that the Uranids passed along to the rocket genius? The exact details are somewhat fuzzy, but he did share a general idea of what was being conveyed. He said this of Barbara Troll's writings, quote, "She received telepathic messages from beings on other planets. Messages so interesting that I couldn't help but pay attention to them," unquote. And of the Uranids, he continued, quote, "They say that the earth is a kind of school where the soul, not the body, is trained. The soul uses the body to gain its experiences, and the teachings endure beyond death. In the afterlife, evaluating the memories of a life lived, so that in a subsequent life we can more easily and better learn what we previously knew imperfectly. The purpose of life is to practice good and to learn to avoid evil. To understand which is better, war or love and harmony, unhappiness on earth, should be understood as a teacher who does not want to make the task too easy for the students, so that he can learn more. These teachings of the Uranids, which coincide in many respects with the lofty teachings of Eastern philosophies, have been truly precious to me," unquote. One may ask, what is so important about this eccentric European rocket scientist from the 20th century? Weren't they all a dime a dozen? Well, not exactly. Hermann Oberth was not your average rocketry engineer, of which there were numerous during World War periods. He is widely considered to be the father of the trade, though admittedly many have been bequeathed such a title like Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, Robert Goddard, and the subject of our previous episode, Jack Parsons. His role here is no less important to the overarching story that is the science and engineering of rocket ships, and ballistic missiles for that matter. You see, Oberth was a Romanian-born German citizen who grew up in the late 19th and early 20th century. Born in poverty in Transylvania, his work would prove invaluable to Nazi Germany and later to NASA, one of many such cases, I might add. He had a genius that was much ahead of his time, so much so that many failed to even recognize it, viewing him as fringe or a crackpot, never really wanting to intellectually engage with his work. In 1917, he had submitted a proposal for a new rocket which could fly orders of magnitude further than anything else was capable of at the time. The German War Department reviewed his proposal and rejected it, citing that it was a physical impossibility for rockets to fly further than a distance of 7 kilometers. And again, at the Heidelberg University in Germany, his doctoral thesis was turned down for being too utopian and too fantastical. Yet despite all of this, he had a certain air of self-belief. He never seemed to doubt himself and would care less if anyone else did. Commenting on whether he would ever write another doctoral thesis, he remarked, quote, "I refrain from writing another one, thinking to myself, never mind, I will prove that I am able to become a greater scientist than some of you, even without the title of doctor," end quote. He was not a man of convention. He was a maverick by all accounts. Hermann was also an avid reader and lover of science fiction, which at the time was a genre often viewed with contempt and suspicion, especially among elite academics in German society. It was a common view that classical literature was the only thing worth reading, and only rubes or peasants would partake of fanciful tales about spaceflight or deep-sea monsters. But being a man that moved to the beat of his own drum, Oberth eschewed the pressure of his peers and dove headlong into the writings of H.G. Wells and Jules Verne. It was his reading of science fiction, not academia, and not the scientific establishment, that led to his lifelong passion for rocketry. At only the age of 14, in the year of our Lord 1908, and before the vast majority of people even knew what a rocket was, Hermann constructed his own model rocket in school. In 1923, he wrote a short book called Rocket into Interplanetary Space, which was mostly ignored or scoffed at by the intelligentsia in his field. Naturally, it did, however, gain a cult following among amateur rocket enthusiasts among Germany's youth, I should say. One student taught by Oberth was a man by the name of Wernher von Braun, a pioneer in the Nazi ballistic weapons program, engineering and producing the V-2 rocket for the Germans during World War II. Von Braun would later be swept up in Operation Paperclip, a later declassified recruitment operation which snatched up top German talent after the war for the Americans to utilize, giving them immunity for war crimes and whitewashing their past in order to make them eligible to work for top-secret U.S. programs. Oberth's book started a domino effect that would change the future trajectory of World War II. It spurred the opening of rocket clubs, conventions, and enthusiasts from across Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Romania, and became required reading for rocket engineers everywhere. It was Oberth who came up with the calculations for the necessary fuel and weight ratios of a spacecraft in order to reach outer space, a formula which was at first rejected by other scientists, but ultimately won out when its calculations were used in the German V-2 rockets launched to outer space in 1944, near the end of the war. It was the first man-made object to ever leave Earth's atmosphere. Despite all of this, Hermann cared little for fanfare or adulation. He was a recluse and an introvert. He seemed to mostly dislike social gatherings, yet he would still occasionally complain that his accomplishments were overlooked or he never received sufficient recognition for his achievements. It was more likely, however, that because he was unable to schmooze at dinner parties and had the charisma of a rock was the primary reasons he was passed over by his peers. It really was because of his eccentricities, his strange intellectual pursuits, which he would work on tirelessly, that he would simultaneously achieve quiet greatness while also being a slight embarrassment among his peers. His wife, Matilda, and daughter would say that he spent almost all his home life in his office reading, writing, and thinking. He was a man engulfed in his own internal world without much care for what happened on the outside. It was said that his wife would often rush house guests to not take too much of Hermann's time when they visited, and all visitations were short and to the point. Among his intellectual obsessions was the topic of extraterrestrial species and the occult, both of which he firmly believed were absolutely real, even if not proven in the scientific sense. In one anecdote, he even attended a séance wherein a medium entered a trance and explained to him that his dead brother wanted to speak to him through her. Oberth claimed that the information that was passed to him, including details that the medium could not have possibly known, he would further tell about telepathic impressions that he would get, which would lead him to some new mathematical formula or philosophical treatise. That it was a sort of inner knowing that would lead him down certain paths, and he would often come across far more like a mystical sage than a nuts and bolts astrophysicist. When he returned to Germany in the 1960s, he would write a book called Catechism of the Uranids, an odd title with religious connotations. He believed that the Uranids were something of a spiritually enlightened race, which blurred the line between corporeal and non-corporeal existence, and that humanity could learn a great deal from their wisdom. He would even later claim that he was receiving telepathic communications from them, though he was often coy about what exactly was the content of those messages and how frequently he received them. It is perhaps this bizarre history of the man who was just as much a magician as he was an astrophysicist that makes him something of an afterthought with the scientific establishment. He is treated as an embarrassment among his peers, scoffed at and ignored. as if to blush at your crazy uncle at Thanksgiving dinner. This is how often he was and still is viewed. To Enlightenment sensibilities, they want to hear nothing of aliens, spirituality, religions, mediums, or anything that might hint at ultimate meaning. But I get the sense that Oberth's breakthroughs in rocketry came because of his eccentricities, not in spite of them. And it would be difficult to imagine anyone else arriving to those breakthroughs without the serendipity which came through his unique view on the world. He truly belongs on the Mount Rushmore of astrophysics, even if he never gets the acknowledgement he deserves, but perhaps that is exactly how he would have wanted it.
Yeah, so Hermann Oberth, as we see here, there's, again, a lot of similarities with Tsiolkovsky. There's a lot of the same threads, similar occult beliefs. Hermann Oberth seemed to get a lot more specific about the entities he was contacted by, these Uranids.
Right. He seemed a lot more sure about what he was
absolutely
interacting with.
And I was trying for the life of me to find excerpts from his book, the Catechism of the Uranids.
Mm-hmm.
It is there. I found a version of it online.
Oh, nice.
But it's all German.
Of course.
There's never been a
translation?
translation into.
Could you run it through AI or anything? Was it possible?
I tried to, and I was having different. It's a long story, but I kind of got on this bad rabbit trail. But
okay.
If there are any German listeners out there who can translate some of this book or interesting excerpts, that would be amazing. And the book is like $100 if you want the hard copy. It's probably like a collectible book. It's like $100 to get a hard copy of it. But I don't see why in the digital age someone couldn't make, a digital version. But anyways, yeah. So Hermann Oberth, very interesting guy. Very, again, not much talked about in modern rocketry or science, but during the days of the V2 rocket, Oberth, like everyone read Oberth and Tsiolkovsky. Those were the two guys. Like even Wernher von Braun allegedly would go over Tsiolkovsky's books like religiously.
Really?
Yeah, he would be like, right. Apparently there's a copy of one of Tsiolkovsky's books that von Braun owned and would be writing in the margins and taking tons of notes and stuff like that. And as we know, von Braun was the engineer who ultimately made the V2 rocket.
Right.
But it was based off Hermann Oberth and Tsiolkovsky's work, right? Like he was the one who sort of synthesized a lot of their writings. And Wernher von Braun is a strange one because he actually sat under. I mentioned it briefly, or we mentioned it briefly in the script here that he sat under Hermann Oberth. He was tutored by him, but von Braun, himself doesn't seem to be that much of an occultist, or if he was, it was highly sanitized. From any records that I can find, he was allegedly a confessional Lutheran.
Yeah, I wasn't able to find anything either. Other than he was like just a Christian, I guess.
Yeah, like like Lutheran.
Yeah,
Lutheranism and Presbyterianism was like common in Germany, right? So, I think it's very strange. I don't know. And then obviously Wernher von Braun went on to be like the head of NASA for a few years when he was in America in the 60s.
Right.
And which is amazing that a guy
it's crazy.
A guy who worked for developed these weapons for what we in the West consider to be like the great Satan, which is Hitler.
Yeah.
But it also goes to show you too that by the 1960s, when Wernher von Braun was one of the chief guys at NASA, it goes to show you that the cultural sort of programming about Germany and the Nazis hadn't fully taken root yet.
Right.
Because I think if like a Nazi scientist in today's day and age was elected to become the head of NASA, there would be absolute outrage over it, right? Like people would be burning the streets down, right? Like it's like you cannot be doing it. But people knew it wasn't even like hidden information by the time he was in NASA that he was part of Germany, like the
Germans,
the SS. Yeah, I guess he wasn't part of the SS, but he was part of their V2 rocket program. It was like very common knowledge. It wasn't like totally hidden. They sanitized it. They sanitized some of the atrocities he allegedly committed. But there was sort of like an acceptance. And he, when asked about it, he would be like, that's kind of how war is. And then after wars, we can all make nice, right? Like, and that was sort of the attitude. So very, very interesting. But coming back to Hermann Oberth here, I just wanted to give those few little notes if anyone was interested. But coming back here to Hermann Oberth, there's a very fascinating interview between Oberth and a Italian journalist named Paola Giovetti. And she interviewed Oberth in the 1980s. And the original interview, I believe it might have actually been in Italian. So this is actually a translation. And I think we're going to finish off with this interview. We're going to go through it, and you can kind of get a sense of Hermann Oberth's sort of perspective and worldview, which is very eccentric. Let's just start. So this is May 1984. I think he died in the late 80s, maybe early 90s.
He would have been old by now.
He was already pretty old. Yeah. And he actually lived in America for a little while. Now, Hermann Oberth was not caught up in Paperclip.
Oh, interesting.
He wasn't even in Germany at the time that the Nazis surrendered.
Oh.
I think he might have gone back to Romania, or he was living in Switzerland or something like that. And so he wasn't even caught up in, and he a few years later moved to America. And to be fair, he was never anyone like high up in German government. And again, he was kind of scoffed at, even though like a lot of people were inspired by him, and the Germans, a lot of their innovations came from him. During the Third Reich's power and during World War II, he wasn't really anyone of any significance. So I don't think he committed any crimes or anything like that. I just wanted to note that as well. So anyways, this interview is between Hermann Oberth and Paola Giovetti in May 1984. So the first question she asks, "Are you a believer, Professor?" And this is Oberth. He answers, "Personally, I am convinced of the existence of a soul that survives the body and is certainly also immortal." So interesting. He sort of has like a lot of theological presumptions, but again, it's also sort of mixed in with this belief about aliens and extraterrestrial species. That are they extraterrestrial or ultra terrestrial? Who's to say?
The next one is question: what convinces you most about the existence of God, of the soul, and of the afterlife? And he answered, "I probably have a natural tendency to believe. However, the parapsychological studies I have done and my belief in the Uranids have provided me with the proof I was looking for." Okay, what proof?
Yeah. This was a question I was asking too. Like, where's this proof? Again, it's hard to find his writings. Again, this guy wrote like tomes about the Uranids.
Oh, really?
Like a lot. It wasn't.
So we just don't really have access to maybe more what he thought,
especially like English
what
speaking.
He encountered.
Yeah, and I'd be fascinated to know if there's any even like Oberth scholars who are like in Germany.
Yeah.
If I can ever get connected to someone who knows more, I'd be like totally fascinated.
Man, that'd be so cool
to learn more about it. But okay, this is her next question. So Giovetti asks, "Let's proceed in order. Among the various parapsychological phenomena, which one seems most convincing to you?" Oberth answers, The phenomena that most strongly supports the existence of disembodied souls is the following. A deceased person once communicated to a medium. You will not, quote, you will now write something that in itself has no meaning, but medium XY will write something else, and medium Z something else still, and altogether this will make sense, end quote. The three mediums wrote their messages, which, when combined, revealed a very precise meaning. It was demonstrated that these mediums knew nothing about each other and had not agreed on what they were talking about. This phenomena has been repeated with other mediums and other deceased souls. The phenomenon is known in parapsychology as, quote, cross correspondence. It is not easily explained other than by hypothesizing the actual intervention of the deceased. In a broader sense, it can also be said that parapsychological phenomena demonstrate that the human psyche is not bound by space and time. Phenomena such as telepathy, that is, direct communication from mind to mind, clairvoyance, that is, the ability to see distant and hidden things, and precognition, that is, the vision of the future, truly speak in favor of a non-materialistic conception of our psyche. So this is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. And if you think about a lot of what the CIA was doing with remote viewing, he seems to have had his nose to the ground on this kind of phenomena even before the government was ever doing it.
Yeah.
And which I find very interesting. And, you know, this was one of his proofs where he gets these mediums together and gets them to listen, so to speak. And then they all come up with these messages that correspond with each other and make one coherent message.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many times he repeated this experiment, who he did it with.
Yeah.
We have no published study of but it is interesting. And there's something I'm going to take his word for it here, because he never really made any money off doing this. And he was actually kind of ostracized for his interest in the parapsychological, in the UFO, in blah, 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 blah. Right. So this is I don't know what your thoughts are on this.
I'm somewhat skeptical.
Okay.
Just because he says the mediums didn't know each other or communicate doesn't mean that they didn't.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. We don't actually know the methodology he was using. Right.
But I mean, it also wouldn't surprise me if it was true either. So
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question is, do you have any personal experiences in the parapsychological field? And he answered, I have participated in séances whenever possible. Once during a séance, my brother Dinge or Dinge?
Dinja or something?
Dingy?
I'm not sure. Yeah.
It's spelled Ding with an E at the end. So, Dinge, who had fallen in the First World War, showed up and told me things that only he could have known. The handwriting in which the medium wrote the message was identical to my brother's, and the medium was unaware that I had a brother. How can these facts be explained? The most acceptable interpretation is that my brother survived his own death and was able to contact me through a suitable medium, the writing medium. All spiritual phenomena are most simply explained if we assume that it is truly the souls of the deceased who act and make themselves perceptible. Now, I don't really understand why he would just assume that it's dead people talking to him. Yeah, that's a little strange to me.
A lot of people do this with seances, though, and mediums.
Yeah, I guess.
So here's the thing. We opened this episode with Sylvia Brown.
Right.
And these kind of hucksters, these kind of snake oil salesmen, who there are plenty, just so many instances of this happening, of these scams happening, right? And a lot of time there are methods, which these sort of sleight of hands, which mediums will use to make you think that someone from the other side is talking to you.
Right.
But they kind of are vague enough in the questions and the leading questions they'll ask to get information from you without you even sort of realizing it. It's a little bit of a bait and switch, right?
Yeah.
And then it makes it sound like, oh, they actually know all this information that not exactly. However, I do think that there are instances which I don't know that they are real, but are more difficult to explain.
Yep.
That I have read about of mediums, and far less well-known ones. It seemed like the most well-known mediums and psychics are always the most scammy, and
Right.
the less well-known ones are not. And I don't know why that is. Again, there's this poisoned well effect that we've discussed previously, where certain phenomena that does happen is legitimate, can be legitimate occasionally. But then you get like scammers who come in and poison the well, right? And then
Right.
just people can dismiss it out of hand. Now, getting back to the question, who are these mediums? Let's assume a real medium is actually talking to something.
Right.
What exactly are they talking to? I agree with the premise of your question. Is it right for us to assume that they're just talking to someone who's dead?
I think they assume that because they call on the dead. So I think
Yes.
that's where their assumption comes from. But I think it would be foolish to believe that.
Yeah.
Even if you were a medium, how do you know what
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
talking to?
And that's a great point, is because like, how do you know you're not talking to the Uranids and they're just being deceptive, right?
Yeah.
And why wouldn't they know information about your brother that no one else knows?
Yeah,
right?
if they're a non-corporeal being.
Yeah, and this is always my issue with people sort of in the New Age or who sort of like believe in these phenomena, which in a sense I do believe in the phenomena. I don't believe in the interpretation of the phenomena or the often benevolent interpretation of the phenomena. I think there is trickster aspects to it, deceptive aspects to it, that often are there to lead you, either deceive you entirely or lead you down a rabbit trail that leads nowhere.
Yeah.
And that's very common. So very interesting. But I think it is good to point out that whatever mediums are talking to aren't if they are talking to anything, it's not necessarily your dead relative.
Yeah.
It could just be some sort of spirit, some sort of entity that might have knowledge about your dead relative.
Yep.
And, take with that what you will. Next question here from Giavetti. Professor, tell me about the Uranids. Who are they? Answer from Oberth. They are human beings like us, but far superior to us, who inhabit other celestial bodies. Being superior to us, they possess far greater knowledge in every field, even religion. And I owe many of my beliefs to them. So this isn't so dissimilar to Tsiolkovsky's understanding of the sort of like celestial beings that he believed he was in contact with, the angels,
Right.
he would sometimes call them. Again, this is like, he's very confident that these are just benevolent beings communicating with him. And I can actually see how he would think that, because if they are giving him something like technology that helps forward science, then like you would think, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
Like they're so good to me. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't know. I'm very wary about that. I would always caution, beware making deals with the devil.
Yeah, for sure. That's so funny. Okay, the next question. How did you, so to speak, come into contact with these beings? And Oberth answers, I've always been convinced that at least some of the flying saucers appearing in our skies could come from other worlds. And I have always openly expressed this belief. Consequently, I have been approached by people who claim to have telepathic abilities and to be in contact with these beings. I was particularly struck by the case of a young woman who was about 60 when I met her in 1954. She is now deceased, and I can reveal her name, Barbara Troll. She received telepathic messages from beings on other planets. Messages so interesting that I couldn't help but pay attention to them. So here we go. We just have what we opened this with was Barbara Troll.
Yeah, exactly.
Bringing him.
So, and this is really, so he, from what I understand, is that he had been developing this sort of thesis or hypothesis about the Uranids. And then when Barbara Troll came, she allegedly confirmed what he was thinking about it, and like basically said, yeah, the Uranids are real without her knowing about it, and like relayed this message as like a confirmation to him. Which
is crazy.
Yeah. Again, how do we verify any of this? I don't know. But it's very fascinating.
It obviously meant a lot to him.
Yeah, so. It clearly meant a lot, because he ended up writing like really long books about it. And a lot of his books, especially after Barbara Troll in 1954, he kind of went away from writing the scientific stuff and wrote almost exclusively about like philosophy, religion, and like politics, and like how the future of humanity should look. Again, very similar to Tsiolkovsky.
Yeah.
And I suspect the same entities were contacting him as were Tsiolkovsky.
Yeah.
So here's the next question from Giovetti. What do they, the Uranids that is, say about Earth and our destiny as humans? Oberth answers. They say that Earth is a kind of school where the soul, not the body, is trained. The soul uses the body to gain its experiences, and the teachings endure beyond death. In the afterlife, evaluating the memories of life lived so that in subsequent life we can more easily and better learn what we previously knew imperfectly. The purpose of life is to practice good and learn to avoid evil, to understand which is better, war or love in harmony. Unhappiness on earth should be understood as a teacher who does not want to make the task too easy for the student so that he can learn more. These teachings of the Uranids, which coincide in many respects with the lofty teachings of Eastern philosophies, have been truly precious to me. So this is, we did go quote this in the script as well, but it was part of this interview. And yeah, it's very typical UFO New Age religion. Yeah. It's like, oh, it's peace, love, and harmony. And they're
space brothers.
Yeah, our space brothers. Yeah. Hippy dippy. We're here to like enlighten you warring, filthy humanity. And I find this is like a very common trope, especially with the people who supposedly communicate with aliens.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, next question. And when this chain of existence is concluded, where will we go? To a paradise? And he answers, the experience on earth is but one of the many experiences the soul can have on its infinite journey. The very existence of the Uranids demonstrates, which we don't know that they exist, sir. So Uranids demonstrates that there are many other possibilities. How exactly we should imagine the post-mortem is still unknown. In my opinion, among other things, it is right that we have no certainty about the reward and punishment that await us in the afterlife. Because if we had this certainty, good works would no longer have any value. Good works should be done for their own sake and not for a view to reward and punishments in the afterlife.
Yeah. So
exactly. It's more of the same kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. And this is the final question from Giovetti. So your message to today's man is full of trust and hope. Answer from Oberth. Certainly. I have faith in humanity and its ultimate destiny, and I would like anyone reading this conversation to remember at least this. We may never be able to have logical certainty about our destiny in the afterlife, but today we know that the monistically materialistic conception of the world is nothing more than a belief, and a mistaken belief at that. falsely disguised as science. And knowing this is already something.
That I could agree with, actually.
And to that, Mr. Oberth, I do agree with you.
Yeah.
So I think we'll sign off there.
Okay, sounds good. See you next time.
After so many witnesses have seen the so-called flying saucers, their existence can no longer be denied. I believe that these flying objects come from another solar system.
Consciousness seems to be expandable out into the environment in a way that we don't usually consider could possibly be the case. There are people who get into meditation and all that kind of stuff, but none of that was in my background. So I just found this a challenge, and it was only that the CIA was paying us to look into this that I kept going the next step, resisting every inch along the way. To give you an example.
They believed that they were also in contact with these non-human intelligences, and they were getting what they called downloads of information, creating technologies that were real, and they were selling them on NASDAQ for, a lot of money, like, say $100 million or something like that, undisclosed amounts, but a lot. And these things are viable technologies that we use now, and they make our lives better, and we progress as a species because of them. Now, that has nothing to do with the scientific method.
My second download experience came unexpectedly, February the 26th, 2012, in Laughlin, Nevada, at the River Palms Casino on the banks of the Columbia River. It was at that point when I suddenly got a rush of material that came into my head, and it came with absolute certainty.
Hey, Jordan here. Thanks again for listening to the podcast. Don't forget to go rate and review the show, follow us on social media, and sign up to our Patreon if you want some bonus content. Thanks again. We'll see you guys next time.